The president gets massive pushback from his decision to pull troops out of Syria. London is looking more like the Wild West, and come along with my kids and I on a great Christmas adventure. It's December 26, 2018, and this is The Hot Zone.
This is The Hot Zone. Engaging with the news in a whole new way, international war correspondent Chuck Holton brings insight into areas of crisis and lets you help those affected.
Hello, everybody. I'm Chuck Holton. Hope you had a great Christmas. When President Trump announced last week that the U.S. would begin pulling its troops out of Syria immediately, it caused an uproar even among some of his staunchest supporters. Secretary of Defense James Mattis even went so far as to resign his position over the move, and it's left a lot of people asking why. What caused the president to make this move so suddenly, and why now? Well, I'll never pretend to understand the mind of Donald Trump, but he claimed on Twitter that the pullout was something he'd been wanting to do for a long time and even campaigned on that promise. As I said last week, however, you can't just end a war just by stopping it. And ISIS is most certainly not defeated in Iraq or Syria or anywhere else. In Iraq, for example, there are still attacks by ISIS fighters on an almost daily basis, according to an intel briefing I get every day from a security company based in Erbil, up in Kurdistan. Estimates in Syria are that ISIS has at least 2,000 men under arms, and some estimates range as high as 30,000. Now, that's a pretty big difference. That's because much of the southern part of Syria, as well as northwestern Iraq, are Sunni areas, and ISIS is a Sunni organization. That means ISIS still has at least some support by the people who live in that area, and those citizens could at any time take up arms for ISIS if they felt they had a good reason to do so. The United States leaving the region might just give them that reason. Without a doubt, the people who will most be hurt by this move are the Kurds. I was asked on Christmas Eve to brief a VIP who's hoping to have a meeting with President Trump soon to ask him to reconsider his move in light of the effects it will have on the Kurdish people. And here's why that's so important. The reason the Kurds, the Turks, the Syrians, the Iraqi PMUs, which are controlled by Iran, and everybody else are fighting in that region is not just to defeat ISIS. They're fighting over control of that area. Iran is very determined to assert control there in order to more easily supply Hezbollah with the arms they need to attack Israel. If the U.S. leaves, it creates a vacuum there that will be filled by somebody. Ask yourself who we'd want to fill that void. The only reasonable answer aligned with American interests is the Kurdish Peshmerga. The Kurds number some 36 million people. They're the largest ethnic group in the world without its own state. They've been trying to become an actual nation there for over 100 years. Now, they're made up of dozens of disparate political parties. The Kurdish Workers' Party is aligned with Marxism and has been at war with Turkey since the early 80s. They're officially designated a terror group by the U.S. and Turkey, and they recently claimed responsibility for a car bomb in the Syrian town of Afrin, which killed 4 people and wounded a whole lot more. This is part of the problem. Since the PKK sort of give all the Kurds a bad name in Turkey and Syria, and by proxy, Russia and Iran and even the United States, the YPG, or YPG, is a more moderate arm of the Peshmerga, but they also fight with the PKK. And they've been a part of the Syrian Defense Forces the U.S. troops have been supporting in the fight against ISIS for over a year. ISIS is not defeated. There may be as many as 2,000 active fighters left in Syria, and they're trying to reconstitute in West Mosul, which was never totally pacified. And they still have support from, like I said, the Sunni majority there. Remember, ISIS took over northern Iraq with just 700 fighters. They defeated the Iraqi army that was in the area at the time. The U.S. presence there is vital to our interests in the region for the sake of Israel and for whatever Christians, Yazidis, Druze, or any other non-Muslims that are left in that region. A free Kurdistan would be the only safe place for those minorities to live. Kurdistan has borne much of the cost of the refugee crisis caused by the war in Syria, and there are still hundreds of thousands of refugees living in Kurdistan. And every dollar we send over there to care for the refugees saves Europe and the United States about $13. And we should really support that as much as possible because it will allow the refugees to return home quickly once things calm down in Syria. A permanent U.S. airbase in Erbil would be a really good thing. In fact, if I was president, I'd announce that I'm going to close Incirlik Air Base in Turkey and move it to Erbil. I would send a strong statement to Turkey, Russia, Syria, and everybody else. The Kurds feel very abandoned by us right now, and they feel like this isn't the first time that we've left them hanging. The Obama administration abandoned them, too, in 2014 when ISIS first came into Iraq. So the Kurds are suspicious of America, but remain hopeful. Last time I was there, they had a saying I kept hearing, the Americans will always do the right thing once they've expended all other options. So let's move on to London. They're calling it Lawless London now. The capital of Great Britain has seen a constant rise in crime and violence since the current mayor, Sadiq Khan, took office in 2016. And the numbers are kind of astounding. 2 acid attacks per day. More than 40,000 knife attacks last year alone. Murders are up 12%, violent crime up 22%, robberies are off the charts, and even seizures of automatic weapons, which are completely illegal, are up dramatically. And civilian ownership of guns is prohibited, so that doesn't make any sense. The mayor blames the problem on budget cuts, which have affected the police and easy access to weapons, he says. In the past 2 years, we've seen a push for age restrictions on things like household cleaners, a knife ban, and even a push for people to file off the pointy ends of their kitchen knives. But nothing seems to be working. And sure, more police might serve as a deterrent. And of course, the police need to actually be empowered to enforce the law and arrest perpetrators. But the reality of what's causing this spike in bad behavior in London is much more complex. Now, I'd chalk it up personally to 4 main reasons for this crime wave. Number 1, a flood of cocaine. The last several years have seen major increases in the amount of cocaine flooding into the UK. And since the vast majority of murders in that country, actually any country, are somehow connected with the drug trade, more drugs just means more crime and more violence. And more mental illness, too, which takes me to my next point. The National Health Service in the UK is terrible. Stats out of there show that 40% of all visits to the general practitioner or regular doctor in the UK have to do with mental illness. But long wait times and poor treatment options mean that many people are not getting the help they need. The UK is touted by the left in this country as a model for socialized medicine. But in reality, that free health care in the UK really isn't free by any means. And the care isn't that great either. Number 3, ultra-high taxes. You know, the top tax rate in the UK used to be 99.25%. Now, that's dropped since the 80s, but Londoners still pay absolutely crushing levels of taxes on income, miles driven, purchases with their value-added tax as high as 20% all by itself. They pay taxes on property and services and just about everything else. It's just my opinion, but these kind of tax rates amount to a kind of government-sanctioned slavery that leads to more poverty, despair, and resentment among the population. And we're seeing it in London in the suicide rate among young men especially, who have very little hope of ever becoming upwardly mobile in a society that punishes the hardest workers and rewards illegal immigrants and criminals. Number 4, church attendance. Less than 5% of people in Great Britain are members of a local church. And that indicates to me that many people have nothing bigger than themselves to live for. And it's been shown again and again that when you are the end-all and be-all of your own existence, it brings loneliness and bitterness, and I'd say it dramatically increases your chances of becoming mentally ill or suicidal. We all need other people, and social media really isn't that social. People do much better when they're other-focused, not me-focused. By comparison, church membership in the United States is more than 10 times higher than the UK, and even that number is down sharply, which is not a good sign for American culture either. In the 90s, American church membership was about 90%, and now it's more like 50%. It's declined almost every year. I think you can learn something from everyone you meet. Either learn things you want to emulate or learn things you don't want to do. Now, countries can learn from each other too, and as usual, when it comes to Europe, America can learn a lot about what not to do to make our streets safer. Now, I worry most about my last point with regards to the UK church attendance. American culture is awash with so many forms of media that we're in real danger of entertaining ourselves to death. They say in the UK, the average man spends 11 years of his life watching television. In John Piper's excellent book, Don't Waste Your Life, he makes a really good case on why we should be on our guard against entertainment. And he submits that it cheapens our lives and makes it harder for us to think deep thoughts, feel deep emotions, and establish deep relationships. And that's one reason I started this podcast, not only to give you a concise rundown on world events and crisis, but also to allow you to take a deeper role in it, rather than just being a spectator. I want to help you make the news good for people who are affected by world events. We did this for Christmas with a young single mother from Honduras named Judy. She joined the caravan in November and made her way across Guatemala and into Mexico, carrying her precious little 2-year-old, Noelle Montserrat. Now, when I met them just inside the Mexican border, little Noelle was already sick and dehydrated and exhausted from nearly 2 weeks on the road. And her mother had had enough. She said she wanted to go home, so I offered her a ride back to Guatemala where they could catch a bus that was going to San Pedro Sula, their hometown. Well, they made it back home, and I've kept in touch with Judy on social media since then. And you all pitched in, and I was able to get some money to her for Christmas to buy presents for her daughter. And she sent me photos of the clothes that she bought along with her thanks, and she even asked me to be her daughter's godfather. And you had a hand in that. Now, perhaps we didn't change the world, but we did change that little girl's life. And we made sure that she had a really bright Christmas this year. And I'm proud to partner with you on things like that. Helping those less fortunate. It's a great way to start the new year, don't you think? So if you want to have a part in what we're doing, click on the link below this podcast and go to patreon.com/hotzone and subscribe. For $36 a year, you'll get access to a whole bunch of extras, and your money will get put to good use when I head to Syria next month, for example. I'm planning to bring you along with me when I go. 2019 is going to be an amazing year, so I hope you'll stick around. Before I leave you, I want to share a really cool adventure I had with my kids this weekend. As many of you know, we live in a volcanic crater in the mountains of Panama for much of each year. Well, a few months ago during the wet season, I was flying my drone into the mountains that ring our valley, and I found a really cool waterfall, which might just be the tallest one in Panama. It's not visible from town, and a lot of the old-timers I asked about it didn't know anything about it. So my kids and I decided to go find it. Check this out.
So I think we have managed to make it past the zoo. The zookeeper came running out and thought we were trying to break into the zoo, I think. But now we're totally off trail, and we just have to go cross country and see if we can make it to the right spot. We'll see what happens. So we've probably made I don't know, maybe 200 or 300 meters is all distance wise, and we haven't made a lot of elevation gain. So I would imagine that we've got some coming as we follow this riverbank or riverbed up into the valley. So we are definitely up in the valley now. I can see the top of Gaital over there on that side, and I can see the way it goes all the way around up here. Very, very steep. And the river forks right here. And I think we're gonna go to the right because that's where the waterfall is. We got to the base of the falls, and there's no real swimming hole that I was hoping for up here, but you can see that is one heck of a falls, and I want to come up here sometime when the water's moving. Look at that. So that's a good probably 250 feet right there, and that's just the last little bit of the falls. That's got to be pretty awesome. All right, well, this is about the furthest that we got up here in this valley. We got right up to the head of the valley. Pretty much you can see up in there the very, very steep walls of the back of the canyon, and the water's kind of petering out too. So this is about it. I guess that waterfall we found was the one. Kind of underwhelming, but still, this is gorgeous. This is really amazing.
That's it for the Hot Zone today. We'll be back again tomorrow. I hope you'll be there too. Please like and share on Facebook and YouTube and wherever else you find us. It'll really help us out. Thanks for being here. I'm Chuck Holton.
The Hot Zone is produced by Amy Holton and Livefire Media. Copyright 2019.